Jouska. You're lying in bed, and the room is dark and quiet. And instead of sleeping, you're in the middle of a conversation that isn't happening. You know exactly what you'd say. You know exactly how it would land. The timing is perfect. The words are precise. And you're completely in control of something that exists only in your own head, with a person who has no idea you've been having this argument for the last 40 minutes. That's called Jouska, a hypothetical conversation your mind runs on a loop, the confrontation you never had, the explanation you prepared for someone who never asked, the version of events where you finally said the thing. Most people assume this is anxiety or overthinking. It isn't either of those things. Not exactly. What your brain is actually doing during Jouska is rehearsing. It's a simulation, running possible social futures, modeling outcomes, figuring out who you need to be before the moment actually arrives. The reason high-intelligence individuals tend to experience it most intensely isn't because they worry more. It's because their predictive machinery runs faster and further. The loop feels frustrating. What it actually is preparation that never found its moment. Lachesism. Everything is fine. That's the thing. Nothing is wrong, nothing is broken, the week is moving the way weeks move, and you have no legitimate complaint about any of it. And somewhere underneath that, very quietly, you find yourself imagining a disaster. Not hoping for one, just imagining one. A fire that takes everything. A sudden loss that forces you to start from nothing. Some event dramatic enough to finally give your life the kind of shape that normal Tuesday afternoons never seem to. And then you catch the thought and feel strange about having it. That's Lachesism, the quiet desire to be struck by something that would change everything. Not out of self-destruction, but out of a suspicion that disruption might be the only thing that actually moves you. It tends to show up in the gaps between things, when life is stable but static. When you're not unhappy, but you can feel the ceiling. Your brain doesn't just need safety and comfort. It needs the sense that what's happening to you is going somewhere, that your life has a direction and a shape. When that's missing, the mind starts reaching for hypothetical catastrophe the way a plant reaches for light. Lachesism isn't a dark feeling, it's an honest one. It's your brain telling you something needs to change before it asks disaster to do it for you. Chrysalism. The rain started an hour ago, and now it's really coming down, loud against the roof, loud against the glass. The kind of rain that settles the question of going outside before you even ask it. You're in. The world is out there, wet and cold and entirely optional. And something in you releases in a way that's hard to attribute to anything specific. You weren't stressed. You didn't need the permission. And yet something that was faintly tense has gone quiet. That's Chrysalism, the particular comfort of being sealed inside while the weather makes the decision for you. Named after the chrysalis, the closed and protected space a creature inhabits before it's ready to emerge. The contrast is doing most of the work. It's not warmth alone, because warmth on a clear day feels different. It's warmth made more intense by the knowledge of what's happening on the other side of the glass. Your nervous system is running a constant, low-level scan of the environment, monitoring for demands, for things that need responding to, for the world and its expectations. The storm is one of the very few things in modern life that legitimately turns that scan off. Not because nothing is happening, because everything that's happening is out there, and you are in here. And for now, the distance between those two things is enough. Vemödalen. You're somewhere worth photographing, and you know it, and you take the shot. The light is doing what you hoped it would do, the frame is right, and you look at the image and it's good, technically, compositionally, by any measure that matters, and still something about it feels slightly off in a way you can't locate it first. Then you locate it. This photograph already exists. Not something like it, this one. Or close enough that the difference doesn't survive. Taken by everyone who stood where you're standing, processed through the same filters, posted into the same feeds. The moment was real, the image feels reproduced. That's Vemödalen. The specific deflation of capturing something genuine when the evidence of everyone else having captured it first is already everywhere. The internet made this considerably worse. Before, you might not have known. Now, the proof is one search away, and you usually already know before you even raise the camera. But the feeling is pointing at something deeper than photography. There's a need the brain carries to feel that an experience is genuinely yours, unrepeated, not already worn by other hands. When that gets disrupted, even by something as minor as a duplicate image, the meaning layer around the moment shifts. The mountain is the same. What changed is the feeling that you were the one who found it. Mauerbauertraurigkeit. Your phone lights up, and it's someone you actually like. Not an obligation, not someone you're managing, someone whose company you genuinely enjoy. And they want to make plans. And something in you, without consulting you, just isn't available. You find a reason. You push it back. You tell yourself you'll sort it out later. And later doesn't come. And now it's a quiet evening alone, which would feel like what you wanted, except it doesn't, quite. There's something underneath it that's harder to name than loneliness, because loneliness implies you didn't choose this. That's Mauerbauertraurigkeit, wall builder sadness, the impulse to create distance from people you don't actually want distance from, for reasons that don't survive examination. The guilt is part of the feeling. Not only are you alone, you did it, and you're not entirely sure why. Most people who experience this regularly assume it's introversion or a preference for solitude. Those things are real, but they're not this. This is a reflex, not a preference. What attachment research shows is that when closeness has been neurologically coded as something requiring careful management, the nervous system moves toward withdrawal before the conscious mind has weighed in at all. You close. Then you notice that you closed. The wall goes up first, and the question of whether you actually wanted it comes second, which is why the evening alone never quite feels like the rest it was supposed to be. Anecdoche. You're at a dinner or a catch-up or a meeting where the conversation is flowing and everyone seems engaged. And if you filmed it from the outside, it would look like connection. But if you actually listen to the structure of what's happening, nobody is really responding to what anyone else just said. Someone finishes a sentence, and the next person begins one that was already loaded before the first one ended. A point lands and dissolves without acknowledgement. The stories aren't building on each other. They're cueing. That's anecdoche. A conversation where everyone is talking, and the talking is real, but the listening isn't. A room full of people in genuine proximity who are nonetheless somehow alone in it. Once you have the word, you start noticing the shape of it everywhere. And the more uncomfortable version of that is noticing the shape of it in yourself. Mid-sentence, already 3 steps ahead, while someone else is still finishing their thought. It happens because listening and formulating a response are competing demands on the same cognitive resources. And in most social contexts, the pressure to have something ready outweighs the pressure to actually receive what's being said. Conversation has always been partly about connection and partly about status. About demonstrating that you have something worth contributing. When the second function takes over, the first quietly stops happening. What makes anecdoche feel hollow is that it is hollow. The form of connection is there. The content of it went somewhere else. Ellipsism. You're reading about something that's going to take decades to resolve. A question at the edge of physics. A civilizational shift still unfolding. A line of research that humanity has barely started pulling. And somewhere in the middle of reading, you become aware, not for the first time, but freshly, that you won't be here for the answer. Not because of anything specific, just because the story you're living inside has a length, and the interesting chapters are scheduled for after it. That's ellipsism, the particular sadness of knowing that history continues past you, that the most consequential parts of the human story are probably still ahead, and that you'll leave before the plot resolves. It tends to be sharpest in people who are genuinely curious, which might be why it registers less as fear and more as a specific kind of frustrated longing. You're not afraid of the end, you're annoyed about the timing. What the feeling reveals, if you look at it carefully, is a cognitive capacity that isn't actually common, the ability to care about outcomes you won't personally witness, to invest in a future you're not going to inhabit. Most feelings are about what's happening to you. Ellipsism is about what's going to happen without you. The ache of it and the sophistication of it are the same thing. Zenosyne. You look up, and it's somehow that month again. The one that felt like it was comfortably ahead of you, and now it's here and then almost gone. And you do the mental accounting of what was supposed to happen between then and now, and find the gap between intention and reality is wider than it has any right to be. The year didn't slow down. If anything, the years are getting shorter, stacking faster, and the long, unhurried summers of being young feel like they belong to a different unit of time entirely. That's Zenosyne, the creeping sense that time is accelerating, that the calendar is moving at a pace your life isn't keeping up with, that somewhere between then and now the mechanism changed speed without telling you. The reason almost everyone over a certain age knows this feeling is that the mechanism is real, and it's connected directly to memory. Your brain doesn't experience time as a clock. It experiences it as a density of stored moments. When you're young and almost everything is new, the brain is encoding constantly, and the richness of that storage makes the past feel long and full. As life settles into pattern, fewer things get marked as worth keeping. A month where nothing genuinely new happened leaves almost no trace when you look back. Zenosyne isn't really about time at all. It's about novelty, and what it's telling you is that the recent past has been quieter than you probably meant it to be. Kuebiko. You read something, and then you put whatever you're holding down, and you sit with it for a moment. It was a news story, or an account of something. Violence that had no internal logic, no arc that resolves into anything the mind can process as a reason. And you're not sad in the way you'd be sad about a personal loss, not angry in the way you'd be angry at something aimed at you. You're something else, something more diffuse and harder to locate, a heaviness that doesn't have a clear object, an exhaustion that arrived without you doing anything to earn it. That's Kuebiko, the particular depletion that follows exposure to senseless cruelty, not as a victim, just as a witness, just as someone who now knows it happened. The volume of exposure is the thing that's changed. The events themselves are not new. What's new is that you carry a live feed of all of them simultaneously, and the cumulative weight of that is genuinely different from what any previous generation navigated. What the exhaustion actually is failed sense-making. The brain carries deep models of why people do things, maps of human motivation built up across a lifetime. Senseless violence doesn't just disturb those maps, it damages them, because no available frame makes the event cohere, and the brain keeps quietly returning to it, looking for the frame that isn't there. What Kuebiko needs, specifically, is not more information or more analysis. It needs the search to be called off, so the repair can begin. Exulansis. Something happened to you, something real and specific, that left a mark on how you understand a part of the world. And you tried to explain it to someone whose opinion matters to you. You found the words, you were precise. You watched their face while you talked, and they were present and attentive and said the right things back to you. And you could tell, somewhere underneath all of that it hadn't crossed. Not because they weren't trying, because the thing you were describing has a texture that the telling doesn't carry. The experience knows what it was. The language only knows what it can hold. So eventually, without making a decision about it, you stop bringing it up. That's Exulansis, the quiet withdrawal from trying to share an experience that you've come to understand cannot be fully shared. Not because you're inarticulate, but because the gap between living something and hearing about it is wider than words can bridge. The more significant the experience, the more likely this follows. The things that actually change you are also the things most resistant to transmission. What Exulansis tends to reveal about the people who feel it most is a particular kind of precision about authenticity. They can sense the difference between being genuinely understood and being graciously approximated. And rather than keep offering the real thing in exchange for the approximation, they go quiet. There's no bitterness in it, usually, just a recognition that some things you carry alone. Not because no one would listen, but because listening isn't the same as knowing. 10 feelings, all of them yours. All of them real, long before they had a name.